the most important thing I learned is the system has to serve the story. The thing that everybody loves the most about my system is that it's not like an all the skills style system where you just have powers within you or Jake's magical market. And it's not truly Goblin Summoner, where for the most part you just put cards out and play them. It's a mix of the two. And the reason is I started to design a more pure Goblin Summoner style system, like almost like playing Magic the Gathering. But Shami said, how does this serve your story? Like, how does it serve your characters? And so I thought about it and I was like, well, I'll just make my character one of the cards.
This is the CritRPG podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the CritRPG podcast, the only podcast that gets two of a full set. With me today is John Stovall, notably author and also husband of Shami Stovall, who you've heard last week. And he is writing stuff like, for example, Demon Card Enforcer. Would you like to talk about this book a little bit, John?
Sure. It is
and you're in the right place.
I joke that it is, and I do this because I feel like my audience will understand what I'm saying. It is a noir CCG lit RPG.
That's
yeah. But no, it's
it's pretty good actually.
Yeah. It's an urban fantasy sort of noir setting, a little darker than I think usual for stuff, but not much, just a little bit. And it's a collectible card game style. Yeah. It's not an all the skills style one. It's more like Goblin Summoner, where it has, interactions between multiple cards on the field at the same time. But it does also allow the main character to become directly involved in the situation. There's lots of rules around deck size, deck building, how much power you can use at any given time, things of that nature. I've taken to describing it as Sin City meets Magic the Gathering.
Ooh, nice. That's pretty good.
So,
I mean, I've read the beginning of it because I'm a diligent person who reads stuff. And I love the fact that, like, not even a chapter in, we already get this sense of like, this could be huge. Like, because you already outlined like, oh, by the way, there's like evolutions of this. And I'm like, oh, cool, this is gonna be good. Right. So this is what I really liked about it.
I love.
Can you tell us a bit?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. You go.
I love ways to advance, like new ways to get better. So that system has better cards, tiering up cards to make more advanced versions of cards, and leveling the person up to give them more ability to use their cards, and new specialty card options and things like that. So I joke that it's a triple progression fantasy, 3 ways to improve. 3 whole systems that stack with each other.
My veins.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds dope. So yeah, tell me a bit about how and why this book.
Dude, this is the randomest book I think I've ever written in my life. Shami has a book that she wrote a long, long time ago, traditionally published, and it formed a lot of the backbone of this story. Now I've rewritten it very significantly, and obviously I used it with her permission, but the main character draws very, very heavily from the main character in one of her stories. But what really happened was my friend Ryan Tang of Mimic Me and Tower Apocalypse, he's in our writers group, and he also did a joint project with Shami set in the Frith Chronicles world. So he came to me, and because I'm known as the systems guy in our group, like I'm the one that designs the really cool systems. Everybody that reads my books basically is like, you're an A+ system designer and like a C storyteller at your current level. And so he came to me and he says, I need a system for a card game. Would you make that for me? And I needed to do X, Y, and Z. And so I said, sure. And so over the next 2 or 3 days, I designed this card game system for him. And he had a book, and he had actually written like a third of or fourth of the book. Like it was pretty far along. He's never really continued it, but he wrote it, and I got so excited about it. I wanted to write a card system story, and I love this card system. And I didn't know what story to tell, but Shami has a book that it was not like hugely successful. It was okay, but, and so she allowed me to basically retell that story in a like a magical setting, and to make it into a sort of an urban fantasy as opposed to just a standard like crime drama style story. And so I yeah, I've read that one like 7 times, which is speaks to how good Shami is, because I actually hate crime drama. So don't know how to explain that. But anyway, um, so um anyway, so I just retold the story, and when I put it out, it didn't do as well as I'd wanted originally on Railroad. And so I
Mhm.
pulled it back, rewrote about 40,000 words, made the story and the world a lot more my own. It still obviously borrows fairly heavily from Shami, but I rewrote about 40% of the story legitimately.
Mhm.
Ripped out the beginning she had, put in a new beginning as a separate issue, like another 10,000 words or so, and then put it back up on Royal Road in its new improved version, and that took off like crazy. That did extremely well on Railroad.
Mhm.
I have about 3,300 followers, and I don't know how much sense it'll make to people that don't like work on Railroad, but I still have, after like 120 chapters, I think I'm still getting basically one-to-one correlation between users and views after about a week, which is extremely high. It
Mhm.
normally drops off rather significantly.
Mhm.
So did really, really well. And it's pretty much just mashed two things together. I know that everybody wants to talk about like some inherent genius or flash of insight that came to you, but honestly, I made a system for somebody else, loved my own system so much narcissistically that I wanted to tell a story, couldn't think of a story. And there's a story Shami wrote that I loved, and I just kind of put the two of them together, rewrote it into a magical world, and then did one very major revision, basically, and a couple minor revisions. And there's Demon Card. So, um, I get addicted to systems. That's we were joking earlier about like how I love economic simulator games, but I get completely addicted to my magical
Mhm.
systems. They're all hyper complex. I'm not like that famous in the LRPG world, but to the extent I'm known, I'm mostly known for hyper complex, hyper interesting
Yet.
magical systems. Yeah. This one seems to be, uh, it seems to be moving into the stage where I'm going to be a step up in my fame, so to speak. We'll see what happens. I don't
Nice.
want to get too cocky, but it's looking pretty good. So
Yeah, and I mean, like the only thing that the one thing that sells books the best is more books.
well, yeah, and
So
it's already
should
coming
go.
out. Um,
Yeah.
the next one's out next month.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's gonna be a crazy month. Like a bunch of really big books that are coming out, and yeah, yeah. Have you rescheduled your launch?
No, I was gonna move it up, but the the that which shall not be named convinced me to leave it where it was originally. So I actually have to talk to
Ah,
Sound Booth, because I was originally going to move it to 1114, but I think I'm going to leave it on 1120. Um,
uh, hey, I mean, that's 7 days for people to read that other book. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And like nine
Um,
days, whatever. Yeah, like some. Yeah. I mean, like, and then they're gonna like be like, hey, what else is new? And then they'll be like looking at Amazon, and they're gonna find your book, and you're gonna be famous.
hopefully, hopefully,
It's
hopefully.
gonna be awesome. Yeah. So you said you were like quote unquote addicted to system design, as I wrote it down here. Um, there's so many different questions I have because like I think system design has to be one of my weakest points because I just completely pants my systems, which is not a good thing usually. Um, but how do you generally go about this?
So the most important thing I learned is the system has to serve the story. That's what actually
Mhm.
created the thing that everybody loves the most about my system is that it's not like an all the skills style system where
Mhm.
you just have powers within you, or Jake's magical market. And it's not truly Goblin Summoner, where for the most part you just put cards out and play them. It's a mix
Mhm.
of the two. And the reason is I started to design a more pure Goblin Summoner style system, like almost like playing Magic the Gathering. But
Mhm.
Shami said, how does this serve your story? Like, how does it serve your characters? Because obviously you want your
Mhm.
characters to be able to be a part of the action, to experience fear, to have the threat of
Mhm.
death, to risk things for the people they love, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, I'll just make my character one of the cards, basically. And so I came up with the mantle, which allowed them, and it's different mantles, so they can be different things, have different roles, do stuff like that. And they can switch it out, so they can have different mantles at different points in the game. Um, I'm really good at like game theory. I told you already that I'm addicted to like economic simulators and stuff like that. Like I really like numbers interacting with each other. But also I have a lot of experience. I've been dungeon mastering since I was 10 years old. I designed an
Oh, wow.
entire game system starting when I was 16, and we used it until I was 26. And Shami came into my life and she said, "I don't like your game system." And then,
Oh, critical
yeah,
hit.
yeah. And so then Shami and I designed an entirely new game system. And that game system actually forms the basis of 8 of my books, 4 of Shami's books, 1 of Danielle Main's books. Yeah, so it's technically the backbone of 13 novels at this point. And it's kind of 4 more because, or really it is 4 more because it's really 12 of my books. It's not really 8. But for 4 of them, I adjusted it fairly heavily for sort of an easier dungeon core system. So of the 15 books I've written, really all but 3 of them actually at this point. I mean, technically I've written 16 and a bunch of partials, but of the 15 I've published, all but 3 of them are based on the system that Shami and I designed together. And I did most of the math behind the system, but Shami did most of the purpose and stuff like that behind the system. But when I say I've designed the system in a world, Shami and I have like 6,000 pages of material, including close to 1,000 pages of just powers and rules and design systems as like a backbone to the game. And we've run, I think we ran something like 15 years, probably 20 or 30 campaigns over the course of that time with 3 different dungeon masters through the system. So it's an extremely well designed homebrew system. But I would design subsystems for it. Like I know it's going to sound weird, but it's we had one for like a fantasy world, we had one for a modern world, we had one for in space, including I made starship combat rules and stuff like that.
Nice.
So I just keep doing it. I mean, I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but the real trick to anything, is just do it long enough and you get good.
Yeah.
There's not, I always like that panda, the kung fu. He holds the scroll out and he's like, it's just blank. There is no secret sauce. Like he's just, if you do it long enough, you get good. I don't know what to tell you. Like it takes an average of 10,000 hours to get good at something. So, and I've only got about 3 skills,
which is very unfortunate.
So,
no, but yeah. I mean, I always think that like all the skills is a bit strange for a card game, like because it's not really a card game. It's called all the skills and all the cards, right? So because like it's all about the skills that you gain with the cards. And yes, it's a little deck buildery because there's like these sets. But I don't think up until the end of book 3 anyone's ever gotten like a minor set completed, right? So it's just the big ones as far as I know. So I definitely like this idea of what if it were like more cardy. And Shami last week talked about how in Yu-Gi-Oh they always are in danger, but they can never fight back, and that was a thing that you really liked about yours. So yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you. Like I wrote down a lot of stuff while you were talking, and it's really good tips. Like has to serve the story, have to do it for long enough. Yes, obviously, but also other stuff like how can this system would it make sense in real life is the other question that has been like running around in my head, and I don't quite know how to formulate it perfectly, but yeah. Anyway,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't worry about whether it'll make sense in real life. A lot of people want me to make it into a card game, like an actual card game, and it would not be a good card game.
Yeah,
it would be a pretty good.
It wouldn't be.
It would be a pretty good overlay for a like tabletop role playing game, but it would be a terrible actual card game because it's not designed to be a card game. It's designed to be a Magic system for a story. So
Would it
as
be a good
weird as
video
that,
game?
I mean, as an RPG video game, maybe, but so Magic uses five elements. The reason it does that is it creates simplicity. Each of the categories, it's only got 300. I think the largest one they release is like 386 cards, maybe. And certainly a lot of their sets were like 160, 180 cards, like smaller sets. But that's because they use 5 types, so you can get like 80 or 90 cards per thing. But in a story, you want like the super cool unique powers. You're the only guy that got this thing.
Yeah.
So I created a concept of like these unique cards. Plus, I have like 22 power types that it's broken down into. It's not a viable card game if you have a 300 180 card set with 22 power types where you get 6 so you get like 9 cards per power type. It's not fun. So I just made up rules that said there's like 1,200 cards per release within the world, but that's because I don't have to design 1,200 cards. I only have to design the ones that show up in the story. So I never worry about the real life.
I don't personally think that there's a good. So yeah, like sometimes if I'm talking over you, it's because of the delay that we have. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Like it's I do think that if we transfer lit RPGs into video games, they wouldn't be very good multiplayer video games ever, because it's all about the power fantasy, right? Have you read Shadeslinger perchance?
I have not.
Highly recommended. The audiobook is amazing. You're gonna love Frank. You're gonna love basically everyone who that guy writes. Ripple System by Cal.
Yeah.
I often think like it would be awesome to be the main character in that world, but it would suck to be anyone else. And actually, he would kind of makes that into a plot point at some point. Well, the other players are like, hey, like, you've been playing this game nonstop for like 4 weeks. The rest of us have like shit to do. And like, you're getting all the fucking upgrades, you're getting all the world firsts. Like, we don't even have a chance. This kind of sucks. So it deals with it pretty well, I think. It's pretty good story. And I have one more question. Have you ever talked to John Bierce?
No, definitely no.
You need to talk to John Bierce. This guy loves his systems about as much as you do, but he's more on the like hard science kind of spectrum of it. I think you would really enjoy talking to him, like really enjoy talking to him.
Probably.
Yeah, I'll make a connection. It's gonna be nice. Okay. So what's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
I mean, every piece of advice I've ever gotten that was significant is from Shami. She, I don't want to like sell myself short. I was an attorney, 13-year attorney. I have appellate decisions that changed the law of California, like fundamentally. Pretty small ones, but true, honest to God differences. Stuff that my entire law firm of 42 people couldn't do over 20 years until I showed up. So, and I think I gave her the space to become a God attorney, or excuse me, a God author, the God tier author. Okay. She was also an attorney. She was doing everything fine. She was well on the path, and she decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And, so for, I don't want to sell myself short, but by the time I started to become an author, she had already had a couple published books. More importantly, she'd spent 6 years, almost being like the young master. Like, she's off in a cave learning all the secret techniques. I mean, she read like thousands of pages of storytelling advice. She went to multiple conventions. She dragged me to a couple of those conventions, basically. She learned the industry inside and out. She mastered, she got 10,000 hours in before I even started. Okay.
So while you were out there partying at law, she was studying the word.
Pretty much
just reworked that way.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of, so by the time I started becoming an author, I mean, she's my mentor. You know what I'm saying? Like, she taught me everything about authoring I know, basically, not literally, but like 93% of it. Basically, the only thing I ever really self-taught myself was like dungeon core and how that works, and a little bit about the lit RPG stuff. Yeah, I think I wrote my dungeon core stuff before she ever wrote her first lit RPG. But if you don't count the very, very specific rules for lit RPG and dungeon core, I mean, everything I've learned has been from Shami. The first story I ever wrote is 8% her by word volume because she went through and corrected so much. She literally wrote 1/12 of my story by word count. That's how much she had to fix. She hates when I tell people that, but it's okay. So, but the best, I really do think for me personally, the best advice she gave me is when she told me the system has to serve the story. She was a dungeon master as well. And it was funny because we once took a poll of the people that, which one of us they liked best, like me or Shami, because we were widely regarded as the two best dungeon masters in our extended circle. And the poll broke very nearly 50-50. I think she came out like one ahead, but it was almost exactly 50-50. But every single person that preferred me said they liked my systems and like my cool rules. And every single person that preferred her said they liked the story. Like, it was a very clear, one or the other type of breakdown. The problem is that storytelling is much more about the story and less about the system when you write a book. So she's just unequivocally better in that sphere. And she's helped a lot with that. But I do think I started the way you're talking about, where I was building the systems. You said you pants the system, but I guess I started with the system and then built a story. And I think it's more important to have a story and then build a system. That's the best way I can.
Yeah.
And I've never really done that correctly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I have now at least gotten to the point where I alter the system to fit the story before I start writing the story, is the best way I could say it. Like, I came up with my card system first, but then I altered it so that it would work for the story I was telling. That's the best way I could say it. And I did it all before I started writing the story.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That would also have been the suggestion that I got after you said that. Like, if you have a system that you really love and you enjoy, and then you think about, hey, what sort of people would be affected by the system? Like, really go really deep into it, and then you have like stuff to write for days, like years, right? Because your story has already spawned like a second story in that same universe, right? From someone else. I mean, you're writing one yourself right now, but also.
Yes. So I think I can formally say this now because she's talked about it a couple times, but Casey Azell, who is, I think, also a 2-time Dragon Award nominee like Shami is, and a traditionally published author with Bane and Black Something Press. No, I can't remember. Sorry. She's a science fiction author, is now writing Shadow Card Guardian in my universe. And I'm writing Card Apocalypse, and at least a couple chapters of both of those, more of Card Apocalypse, have gone out to people. Sadly, hers seems to be the more preferred start, but that's all right. I mean, not actually. Sadly.
How long have you been doing this again?
3 years. No, that was the joke we made, is because what really happened is she got my super well designed system, and she's already a Dragon Award nominee author. So of course hers is going to do better because she got the part I do well, and now she's doing the part she does well. Yeah. But yeah. But no, she's writing a story.
That's awesome.
It'd be interesting. I'm really curious to see how it does. It does have a non-lesbian female protagonist. Which is not traditional.
What?
Yeah, that's not traditional in the space, so I'm curious to see how it'll do. Yeah, it seems to be being received very well, but I'm curious to see how well it'll do overall, like, genuinely.
How am I going to fill up my bingo card?
Yeah. No, it's missing a couple of the bingo elements, so so we'll see, but it's being received to the extent that anybody has seen it. It has been extraordinarily well received. Now, admittedly, that's in small bites, but very, very well received at this point. So I'm very excited by that. And then Card Apocalypse, pretty well received, not quite as well as Demon Card Enforcer was. I need to do some rewrites. I think I've got some good ideas. Got some advice from Shami on how to change things. Gonna be taking that advice for sure. I take like 96% of her advice, I think, by volume. But
I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's
She
only
has been studying the blade.
Yeah, well, there's been one or two times where she's had some advices over the 3 years and 15 books that I've said no to, but I think it might literally be two ever. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I'm really
Yeah.
hopeful with a little bit of changes that'll do extremely. It's already doing pretty well, and I'm hoping with a few changes it'll do extremely well. But yeah, it's looking at this point like it's going to be a 3-story world at the absolute minimum. And you know, this is extremely nobody said not to talk about it, but it's extremely early. But Ryan Tang has also talked about possibly co-authoring a story with me. Yeah, so and he's more of a humor guy, so that would be interesting because all 3 of the other ones are sort of hardcore, gritty adventure, and this would be a very different experiment. So you know, we'll see. But
yep, we'll see what's in the cards.
Yeah.
That one was obvious, and I'm very ashamed of it.
I was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I will take your pity laughs. No, okay. My brain has been slowly winding down from this really amazing morning I've had. So I've been plotting a lot, and I mean you already mentioned like the rewriting and all that kind of stuff. I think you're the only person that I've spoken to so far that has actually rewritten a story and put it on Railroad again, besides me.
Yeah,
and you said like it has like.
I got so close the first time. Okay, like there was a very specific reason why I did this. There was one element that made a lot of sense in Shami's original story, and I copied it very badly, and I don't think it translated to the RPG crowd as well. The female love interest had a quest, I guess, because her brother was a complete douchewagon, but the brother kept douchewagoning over and over and getting in the way of the main protagonist, and people started to hate him with a like incredible passion. And normally if I got bad reviews like that, I probably would have just written a book, put it out, and abandoned it. But the problem was I was getting like crazy high reviews over the system. Like, it was like, I love your cards, I want to make cards, I want to you know, people were coming onto my Discord, which had never happened before. I had like 2 Patreons and like 1 guy on my Discord for all my previous stories. I mean, that's not really true. I had like 15 or 20 Patreons, I think, at the nadir before this. But anyway, was not getting a huge amount of traction, and I certainly only had 1 guy on my Discord that talked to me ever. And all of a sudden, all these people started popping in. They didn't want to talk about my story; they just wanted to make cool cards for the universe. They just all wanted to design new decks for them that were cool. And so I was like, okay, clearly I've got a winning system here, and the story's almost there. But like, so many people were like, I'm leaving the story if the brother shows up one more time. Like, I'm just going to leave this story completely. And it was very pivotal to Shami's original story. And so that was the huge rewrite. So, you know, the story's only about 105,000 words, and I literally ripped about 40,000 words out of it completely in order to remove and rebuild reasons for the characters to do what they were doing that was not associated with the brother, put in new plot points, things like that. But it was because I was getting this like dichotomy. Like, half the people were like incredibly fascinated by the system and loved my world, and half the people were so angry about this particular element in the story. And the net result was I was getting like mixed reviews, like about a 4.5, 4.55. I think it ended about a 4.52 on Railroad, which is not bad, but it's not great.
It's very good, yeah. You know what's not great? 4.13 on Torchbearer. So you're doing okay.
Although I will say this much: sometimes it doesn't translate correctly. You know, the Fusionist. Yes. Yeah, you know The Fusionist by Jonathan Brooks. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, so Jonathan Brooks was a Dungeon Core author, and I think he wrote 42 or 43 Dungeon Cores from like 2018 to like 2023. And then he stepped his toe into the non-Dungeon Core, and he wrote something called The Fusionist. And he put it up on Railroad first, and it got lambasted. I think it got down to like a 4.09. something like that. Like just got absolutely torched. Um, and he pulled it off and he put it up on Kindle Unlimited anyway. And that is it did incredibly well. I think it was his absolute breakout novel.
Jesus.
Um,
5,000, 4,000 rating. Holy cow.
yeah, that story got ripped to shreds on Royal Road.
With that cover too. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. But that
no,
cover,
it's okay.
like, yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying is I didn't think it was going to be successful because I saw it go up Royal Road. It got torched on Royal Road. The comments were incredibly harsh. I never read it, so I didn't even know if they were right or wrong. It didn't look like it was hitting. And then he put it up and it just did absolute gangbusters. So you just never know. You never know. Even if you're getting bad on Royal Road, maybe you'll hit on Kindle. It's a different audience. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just not ready to take that plunge because I know there's a bunch of stuff that I really think I can do better, but yeah, you know how that feels, right? This like idea of like
I 100% do. So the only story I have actually rewritten is parts of. Well, that's not true. I did a little bit of Elf Empire too, but the only serious rewrites I've ever done, like mega rewrites, are on Demon Card Enforcer. To a certain degree, I feel like if I've already put 100,000 words in and the story isn't working, put it out there, make a little money, and write another 100,000 word story. I mean, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but if I'm going to rewrite most of it anyway, I might as well just learn from my mistakes and do something better the next time. Again, there were specific reasons why I was willing to reinvest in Demon Card Enforcer, because it was getting this incredibly double reviews. Like some people absolutely loving it for the system and some people absolutely hating it for the character. And so I had a very specific reason why I did these rewrites. But normally if I have a story and it's mixed, I mean, and Shami has told me that this might be a problem because, sometimes I call good enough and just throw it out into the world. But, there's a certain degree to which would you rather have two stories or a rewritten story in terms of the time it takes. So
rewritten story.
Definitely.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read, Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
That's my thing, right? Because like it also like it depends on what you want to do. Without like wanting to step on your toes, like you said so yourself, like Shami is going for the Dragon Awards, right? That's what she wants to do. She writes like really like beautifully crafted prose and all that kind of stuff. Like this is what I want to do too. I want to do like really good fucking prose. I want to do like really good characters, and I want people to stay for the characters. And I think that like I've plotted and like written and like done it so much in this world already that it would be a waste to just like put it out there and let this entire thing just like die with like maybe like 200 reviews or whatever. Like if I even get that many. Or maybe it does hit. I don't know. But like, I don't feel as though it would be. Maybe it's a sunk cost fallacy. Absolutely, right? Maybe I could be writing something else that like makes me much more money. But the point is like, I'm not writing for the money. I'm writing because I really like this world and I want to find a way of telling that story in a way that make other people fall in love with it as much as I do. I did. Like, so, that's my goal.
Yeah. I always sure it was, but
go ahead. Come on.
I am writing it for the money, but not in the way that most people would think. Okay. I'm basically, I could be a kept man. Okay. I quit being an attorney because Shami was making a lot more money than I was as a 13-year attorney that changed the appellate law of California. Okay. So I could 100% be a kept man. It's not about, I need it for us to live or anything like that. Shami keeps me in food and games and dogs and all the rest of it. Okay. I don't need to worry about that. I am a lit RPG bro in my soul. I want to see it. I want to see the numbers go up. I know that sounds like insane, but I want to be successful to be successful. I want to be successful to see the numbers change. I want to be successful to see that it was just better than last time, that I learned the trick of this game, which is writing, and did it better. Like, I know that sounds like so insane, but it bugs me if I do poorly on things because I'm like, well, I did better on this one. Why is this one not? You know what I'm saying? I don't like failing, but it's um I don't know, man. I mean, you know how guys are. We could be happy in a 6 foot by 6 foot room if we had a good TV and something like that. It's not like, you know, a nice computer. It's not like I need it, you know.
I'm just now designing like my first like you know, I got some preserved moss and I made like a beautiful picture out of it, and it like this is my first, well, not my first, but I'm getting into plants. That's what I'm saying, right? Because I gave up on being successful ever. I'm kidding. The thing that you said about like, hey, sometimes the second one doesn't do so well, right? I relaunched Torchbearer. Like the first one I had like 200 followers. This first rewrite I did had 1,400 at peak. And then the relaunch of that, which is objectively better and longer, has like 800 now, after like a launch that like stopped at like 702 or whatever, right? So like you can't really predict the market. Maybe I just got like screwed by the algorithm, or maybe people just don't like it,
Actually,
or maybe I got the wrong reviews at the start. Yeah.
There's a whole thing going on right now. It's not actually, it doesn't have anything to do with you. I mean, maybe it does. I don't know that, but it's not necessarily about you at all. One of the 3 big sites, and I can't remember its name now, basically died because it tried to do like a weird publishing thing and put its own published authors first and stuff like that. Like the one of the railroad competitors. And a whole bunch of authors jumped ship to Railroad. Railroad now has something like 500 stories a week releasing, is what I heard.
Yeah, I know.
So you know, the competitive environment, has gone absolutely batshit insane.
And
you know,
if
getting
your story
out there
isn't on meta, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, DCE in the long run did way better than Elf Empire, but Elf Empire released in like a little over 2 years ago, and Elf Empire was on the front page higher and longer than Demon Card Enforcer. And the first release of Demon Card Enforcer, which flamed out, got lower reviews, and then had a pretty heavy drop off of followers, was actually the longest one I ever had on Rising Stars on the front page. And then the most recent version of Demon Card Enforcer, it got up there and hung out for a little while. It was there for 3 or 4 days, I think, and I think it hit like 6, but it never even got in the top 5. But it's the one that's by far the most successful. Like, people just stay. They stay. That's really the difference, is they stay. So now I've got like 3,300 followers.
Yeah.
And they all still read, basically. Like, again, I could show you, but like five releases ago, which is only like 2 weeks, I have like 3,900 views against 3,300 followers. But it is
now I gotta check.
Oh,
yeah. Like, actually, there's very few. Like, I have like very few points where people like stop in my story. Like, if you're continuing, like, there's like one chapter that people stop on. I have no idea why. And all the rest just read to the end. Right, so staying is nice, but I think that like, I think that having my main character a bit more fleshed out at the start, because to be quite honest, I didn't even know who she was really at the start, would have definitely made like a big difference. But speaking of which, what's one thing that you have learned while writing that you would do differently in a new story, or would go back and change if you could?
I think I'm going to stop writing. Well, it's not really do differently. It's just I'm never going to do it again. I cannot write sex scenes to save my life. I also cannot write dark scenes, like really dark scenes that people want to read. So I will always keep my stories basically clean of that, I guess is the best way to say it. So I told you I was an attorney, right? I mentioned that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So my job, I was a defense attorney for 11 of the 13 years, and I was a dependency attorney for 2. Dependency attorneys is where children get taken away from their parents for abuse. Okay.
Mhm.
I defended 4 murder clients.
Mhm.
I had a lot of really, really, really dark cases. I was also a child defense attorney, not dependency, but like defending children that were accused of crimes, which surprisingly was frequently darker than the adults. I know that sounds really weird, but
Mhm.
I think children don't even understand half the time
Yeah,
when they do terrible. Kids just do terrible things without even thinking about
Yeah,
it. Um,
no amygdala.
yeah. So I feel like in my brain, I need things to be truly dark for me to feel like a villain is truly a villain, and I feel like I need things to be,
Mm.
borderline grimdark before I start thinking like this is a world that needs to be really, really fundamentally changed. And I wrote
Mhm.
the first story I wrote was just a copy paste dungeon core. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've told everybody it's not like this is a secret, but I wanted to rewrite one of Jonathan Brooks' stories that I really loved because the ending didn't go the way I wanted, but I wanted to write it in the style of Dakota Kraut.
Mhm.
And so it was very
Okay.
formulaic. Okay. But the second story I wrote was my baby. All right. It's one of my like 2 serious passion projects where I was like very personally invested in it. And it's a 3-book series. And it was originally planned as a 13-book series. Um,
Mhm.
and I wrote a lot of really dark stuff, like a lot of really dark stuff into it. And it is by far my least well received series. I think there's a couple people that will never read me again based on it. Like the reviews, there was like 2 or 3 people that were like, I will never ever read anything by you ever again based on what happens in these stories.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it made $0. The costs of producing it, I think we're like positive 100 now after 3 full books after a couple years of it being out there or something like that. Like I'm earning less than a penny per hour that I put into that project at this point. So, yeah, and nobody liked it. And when I first started writing some other stories and gave it to my writers group, they were all like, "This is starting to feel the same kind of stuff." And so I'm just never going to touch it again. Never going to write
Mhm.
non-completely fade to black sex scenes. Never going to write anything seriously dark. Just not touching it.
Mhm.
I've been burned. I'm never going back there.
Yeah.
I know I sound like
Yeah.
a coward, but that was my baby. That was my passion project. I was like, man, I love this world. Put a lot of stuff into it. Widely hated, widely disliked. Don't want to go back there. So I'm just gonna stay away from it. I need to remember that just because
Have you
I
heard
did.
about the magic? Mhm.
Go ahead.
You did?
Wait,
No,
what?
no, no. You finish.
Oh,
1 second. Edit. Now you finish.
I need to remember that just because I spent 13 years in like incredibly dark, terrible, sad world that not everybody did, and they don't want to read about the same villains that I encountered. So, yeah.
Have you ever heard of the magic of pen names? We can do all kinds of shit with pen names.
Look, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you.
To be real,
I don't. Oh,
Hmm?
I don't want to lose money under a pen name either. I mean, nobody liked it.
Uh,
It wasn't a matter of trashing my audience. I kept most of my audience. Like most of them still read through, my Amazon follower list and stuff like that. Because most of them stay for the systems. Everybody loves my systems. Like it's my Dungeon Core audience that still gets to read hyper complicated systems. Okay.
which is good.
Yeah. I just
Like
I don't want
what I'm
$0 projects.
what I'm saying is that like there is a market for that, right? There's definitely a market for like passionately written, really really dark stuff. It's just not LitRPG adjacent at all. People are doing this to get escapism, and
Yeah.
people don't want to read about like really really grim shit, which is kind of why this hurts my soul but I love Godclads. Godclads is so good, but because of the entire premise, and like God is dead, and like we're all wearing like the dead skin of the gods, like gain a shrapnel of their power. That sounds super grim, even though it's like the most shonen anime kind of thing you could ever think of. But like there are scenes in it where Avo basically like euthanizes people like dying of like bleeding out over like hours or whatever. And it's all seen through this like almost uncaring, almost inhuman kind of point of view. Wonderful story, completely bombed because people
Yeah.
don't want that, unfortunately.
No.
Now, if you were like taking this and going to like our Grimdark and like posting it on air and then saying, oh, and also by the way, you nerds, it has numbers in it. Like, oh, wow, awesome, right? Would be like maybe different. But I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm bristling at is that not because of you, like you do whatever you want, like it's a good plan that you have, but always when I hear someone talking about like abandoning that passion project, I'm always like, no, you have to push on, because I want to push on in my passion project, right?
Well, my first passion was Dungeon Core. And I also like empire building stories, and Elf Empire. It's more of an adventure story, but it has a very distinct empire building system in the background. And we spend a couple chapters every 50,000 words just sort of dealing with the empire stuff. So don't get me wrong, I have other passion projects, but the very first one I got like that was me in sense of not like, because I had a passion to write Corrupted Core because I love Dungeon Core, but it was I was just trying to tell their story, I guess, just differently. But the first one I did where I was like, whoa, I'm going to break new ground, I'm going to do all these things that I'm excited for, that one definitely bombed. But it's not like I don't have, I mean, I guess my passion is more for like system building and empire building and stuff like that. But trust me, I got more systems up here that I need to find stories for. I think, I don't know if it'll happen for sure, but Shami has talked about dual writing a system with me, because I think I've finally reached the point where I'm good enough that with her help we could produce a book together that would not be dragging her down. And so I maybe
you could be dragging each other to the awards, the Dragon Awards.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think I've reached the point where if she gave me a story, I could do it justice. I know that sounds like weird, but she does. She does understand story structure substantially better than me, but I make really good systems, and so I could make, if I got one of her stories and my systems, I feel like that could be, a 10,000 review story under the right circumstances.
So I was when the other week I was talking to Drew, and we got to talk about all the clients. We got to talk about you too, right? And like one thing that he like said was that he was super excited about Card Apocalypse because he loved the way that you had evolved in like writing your characters. So I definitely agree. All right. Now, yeah, go ahead.
It's funny because the single biggest complaint I get about Card Apocalypse is there is not enough characterization in the beginning for the main character. So
that just means they want more.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tune it up. I think this is another one where I am gonna do a decently substantial rewrite. Shami gave me a lot of ideas as well. But I'm very excited to get this one out there. I think this one is a little closer to a passion project for me as well. I'm not like inherently an urban fantasy guy, but I am inherently a sort of rebuilding an apocalypse guy. So, yeah,
well,
so that'll be a little more exciting.
Have you read Half-Life Empire? So what?
I love Half-Life Empire.
Sorry, go ahead. It's so good.
Actually, though, so I feel like Shami has a couple genius books, like genuinely like physical level reactions I've had. And I like Half-Life Empire a lot, but I love Star Marque Rising beyond all reason. That has
Yeah.
that is one of the all-time best stories ever. Not like Shami's best stories. I just mean best stories. Period.
The premise of it has already got me hooked. It's super good.
Yeah, crazy good. My father was a curmudgeon. He was a disagreeable individual by nature.
Okay.
And the one story of Shami's where he was like, "My God, I cannot ever get enough of this," was Star Marque Rising. He literally at one point he says, "I'm 30 pages from the end. I can't imagine how the main character will get out of this situation, and I have to know. I have to know. I cannot put it down possibly." And I feel the same way. Star Marque Rising. I mean, we're just only talking about it because you brought up Half-Life. I like Half-Life a lot. I don't want to, but whenever anybody brings it up, my first thought is the science fiction book. For Shami's science fiction books, Star Marque Rising is. I mean, I would bet it against like, like Heinlein, S.M. Sterling, like the huge names in, like American sci-fi. I would 100% hold it up against the absolute giants of the genre, like Asimov, all that kind of stuff. I cannot recommend it enough to people, in case you can't tell from listening to me ramble. But.
No, absolutely. What are some other, what's another book that you love and why is it awesome?
You mean of Shami's or just in general?
In general.
Well, I feel like if we're talking lit RPG specifically, okay, for me, the two books that
everything.
Yeah, for lit RPG, I'm just gonna say really quickly, the two books for me, the first one is DCC. That's an extremely uncontroversial pick. Everybody loves DCC, but it is legitimately a book that I love. I think it's incredibly good. I got to it very, very late. I hate the cover. I hate every cover that Dungeon Crawler Carl has ever had, ever. It looks silly and ridiculous to me.
Okay.
And I skipped it for years based on the cover. And finally, I saw like the 100th repetition of people saying it's good, and I was like, I'll check it out. And I basically binged 5 books in the series in like 2 or 3 days. Okay. I love that series to death. I think Matt Dinniman is probably the peak lit RPG writer we have at this point in time. Not that somebody else won't be better later, but I think at the moment he's the peak guy. More controversially, I love The Land by Aleron Kong. It was my entry point. And somebody once joked that the best Zelda game is whichever one you played when you were 13 years old. And I feel the same way about The Land. I'm not saying it's the best, but it was my first. It blew my mind when I read it, and I will always have positive nostalgic feelings about it. That's the best way I can say it. I don't know that it would necessarily be my first recommendation to people now, but it will always hold a special place in my heart just because of its first time. The one that I actually recommend to people the most that for sci-fi novels, there's an author called David Brin. And most people don't know him very well. Like he's not like uber famous, but I think he writes some of the best books in existence. He also wrote, it was made into a movie, but the movie was absolutely god awful. It's called The Postman. And he is a very left-wing writer. Like he's personally very, very, woke, as you would say. But he wrote the best description of patriotism from a left-wing perspective I think I've ever read in my entire life. And it's an absolutely beautiful book in my opinion. Crazy good. And then he also wrote what might be my single favorite book of all time. Still, it's called The Uplift War. And it's much more space opera, but it has another one of those extremely good male arcs where I feel like if you're a man, and this one's much more blue collar than a lot of the arcs that we see, guys that just become uber killers and stuff like that. But it's a full space opera, like hardcore space opera type stuff, and it's called The Uplift War, and I would recommend that to basically anybody.
The Uplift War. Let me see here. Okay. Oh, he also wrote the practice effect.
Yes.
Huh.
I like that book. I like the practice effect a lot as well, but that one's more fun. I don't think it's quite as deeply philosophical, or it doesn't really hit like the true like hardcore storytelling arcs quite as well, but it does have one of the most interesting premises of any sci-fi novel I've ever read.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Dope. All right. Now we are getting to the point where we're talking about shoutouts.
Okay.
Who do you want to shout out?
I mean, at this point in time, I would shout out Shami just 100%. I think Time Marked Warlock is one of the best stories ever written. That's another one where I feel like Shami only has two qualities. 70% of the time she writes really, really well, and 30% of the time she writes could stand with the peak of the genre across all time, wherever she's writing. And I think Time Marked Warlock falls in that category. I feel it is the best male redemption arc I have ever read in my entire life in a fantasy setting. People don't usually like to hear that because they think the male character has failed or something like that, but the failure occurs before the story starts. And it's a character that is very, very strong, very, very powerful, but made a terrible, terrible error 10 years in the past. And a situation occurs where he has to come out of retirement, redeem himself. And it is mind-blowingly beautiful. It is mind-blowingly fun. I've read that book 5 times, and she only wrote it in October of last year. And the second one is even better.
Nice.
I keep hassling her to write the third one. She's got a lot of projects. She's only 4 chapters in, unfortunately. But the second book is already 100% done and ready to go. And I've read it 3 times, and it hasn't even come out yet. And I'm partway through a 4th read.
Awesome.
I cannot overstate how good those books are. If you're gonna go, I mean, I can do more than one. Like, what's
please?
Oh, okay.
These are like
I think one of the most overlooked authors in our genre of lit RPG is Nathan Ameye. I'm probably saying his last name wrong. He wrote a book.
Well, how's it spelled?
Ameye, I believe. First name Nathan, Nathan. He wrote the Black Dawn trilogy, and I think it is an absolutely fantastic. I think it is a very well written book with one of those genius level systems. The system is what mostly attracts me to it, but it is on top of a very solid story. I think that is extremely, extremely good story. And I also like recommending him because I feel like he's somebody people might not have heard of. I mean, I could be like, yeah, everybody get DCC, but everybody's heard of DCC. I'm not helping anybody by talking about DCC.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people that would really love the Black Dawn trilogy that have never picked it up. And so I would very strongly recommend that one to people, especially if they like my stuff, because I am known as a systems guy. Like, I normally pack a very high level system on top of a decent story, and I feel like Nathan writes the same way. He packs genius level system on top of a solid story. And so if you like the way I write, you're almost certainly going to like the way he writes.
Awesome. Okay. I've actually I found him, and he's also one part of the duo that wrote Audit Team 6, which has popped up in my feed a couple of times. I'm like, I gotta get to reading that. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think this is then maybe possibly also already it for the main episode.
Okay.
Do you have any last words?
No, thank you. I really appreciate you, taking at this point nearly 2 hours to help me spread the word. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is really why I enjoy doing this. Especially now that you shouted out like smaller authors and stuff like that, because I do think that one of the cool parts about our author group is, or our author circles, the space, is that we all kind of believe that the rising tide lifts all boats, right? So I really love it when people shout out smaller books and they mention smaller books even after they made it. And I strive to do the same. And this is why I started this. All right.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah. with that being said, this has been a CritRPG podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you want more of this stuff, there is a Patreon account, and all my Patreon money goes to my editor. So if you want my editor to get paid, and if you want to have even more of this stuff, then yeah, go ahead. I have like 1 extra hour for each hour of podcast that I have on there. So you're looking at least 70 hours of podcast, talking about writing, talking about plotting, talking about all sorts of stuff. And yeah, obviously I love this show, and would mean a lot to me if you did too, if you supported me. Otherwise, spread the word. But that being said, thank you everyone for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on.